After an ongoing confidential penal process that concluded on Thursday, Viganò was excommunicated and found guilty of schism, which is considered a canonical crime of refusal to submit to the authority of the Pope.
That's some pretty serious stuff, to be perfectly honest with you, and it's not very common that Supreme Pontiff, the Pope, would excommunicate such a prominent person in the Church. Welcome to the Father Leo Show, where I am dishing out faith, culture, and commentary. And in this episode, we're going to discuss the Viganò excommunication. Why did an archbishop get excommunicated by Pope Francis? Was it because allegedly Pope Francis is a liberal protecting pedophilia? Is it because Viganò thinks the Holy Father is ushering in a new world order and pandering to climate cultists? All of this stuff can be overwhelming, and we don't even know what the word excommunication means, so we're going to get into it. But before we do, make sure you like, subscribe, share, and comment on this video. And also consider joining us on our Patreon community. We have many ways and different levels in which you can join our Patreon community, but it really gives us a chance to know who really is part of the Father Leo Show community. That's all it is, but it also gives us the support so that we can continue to provide this content, which is not going to try to make you mad or divide us, but really just give us a chance to learn what the Catholic Church teaches. So let's just jump right into it with faith and understanding excommunication. This all came about because Archbishop Viganò was excommunicated. Let's learn a little bit more about this from EWTN News Nightly.
Thank you for being with us. Our top story tonight, the Vatican officially excommunicates Archbishop Carlo Maria Viganò, papal nuncio to the United States, from 2011 to 2016. The ruling comes after Archbishop Viganò defied a summons last week to appear before the Vatican office on the doctrine of faith. There, he was set to face charges of schism. After an ongoing confidential penal process that concluded on Thursday, Viganò was excommunicated and found guilty of schism, which is considered a canonical crime of refusal to submit to the authority of the Pope. It is also the most serious penalty a baptized person can receive, being placed outside of the communion of the faithful of the Catholic Church and denied access to the sacraments. Archbishop Carlo Maria Viganò was appointed papal nuncio to the United States in 2011. He is known for managing the Holy Father's 2015 visit to the United States, where Pope Francis canonized St. Junipero Serra outside the Catholic University of America and addressed the joint session of Congress for the first time. After this historic visit in April of 2016, Viganò turned 75 and then submitted his customary resignation letter. He was replaced by now Cardinal Christophe Pierre. But in 2018, Viganò released a bombshell report accusing the Holy Father of ignoring and failing to act on the now confirmed abuse allegations against former Cardinal and one-time Archbishop of Washington, D.C., Theodore McCarrick, and called for Pope Francis's resignation. Viganò went into hiding that same year. A later Vatican inquiry cleared the Holy Father's actions related to the McCarrick scandal. Now, 7 years later, the official Vatican process concluded Viganò's excommunication was based on his ongoing public refusal to recognize and submit to the Supreme Pontiff's rejection of the institutions he serves and questioning of the magisterial authority of the Second Vatican Council. Viganò rejected the process and the potential excommunication and did not present a defense of his actions to the Vatican. On June 28th, his social media statement further accused Pope Francis of heresy and schism over his promotion of COVID-19 vaccines and his overseeing of relations with China and the process to appoint bishops there. Viganò's excommunication can only be lifted by the Holy See.
That's some pretty serious stuff, to be perfectly honest with you, and it's not very common that Supreme Pontiff, the Pope, would excommunicate such a prominent person in the Church. He was the papal nuncio. I mean, it would be no different from saying, jailing the former Secretary of State, Hillary Clinton. That's kind of like the seriousness, but in the church understanding. So what I think we have to do is basically try to understand, number one, relax. From a Catholic point of view, we can jump right into it. I'm going to jump more into this when we get to the commentary and how you're supposed to, or excuse me, how is an appropriate way to react to these experiences, because it really seems like the church is very divided and very confused. But is it? If we kind of understand what excommunication is, there are a couple different things that we have to discern. One is that the excommunication is not as if there is a separation, like an ex-wife. You are no longer a part of that person's life. It really means that it is separated from the communion or the sacraments, because we're not kicking someone out of the church. Rather, we're saying that there is a rupture in the communion. And that's what an excommunication ultimately means. Now, this is all based on canon law. And in 1983, canon law was given a new code, a new way to, not that the law has changed, but a new way to understand and how to apply the law. We see this, if we were to kind of look at it from Scripture, we have to ask, what can separate us from the love of God? Well, nothing can. Technically nothing. God is close to us even if we are separated. But when it comes to the church, which is God's family, there are going to be rules and regulations. Even as like some Protestant churches will say, we don't like the Catholic Church because of all of these man-made rules. But I guarantee you, they have just as many, if not even more. They're just not codified. And so when we look at excommunication, it doesn't mean that the church doesn't love this person. It means that there has been a communion that has been ruptured, kind of like the difference between bending something and breaking something. It says in a way that there has been a bend and also a little bit of a break. Can it be healed? Yeah, like a bone can be healed, but it does take some time. So you also have to realize that excommunications are considered medicinal. Above all else, it's to provide an opportunity for some sort of healing to take place between that person and obviously the Catholic Church. In an excommunication, someone is prohibited. In this case, the Archbishop is prohibited from celebrating the sacrifice of the Eucharist and other sacraments. That means that an excommunicated priest could not celebrate any of the sacraments. And, in the case of a lay person, believe it or not, this might be a surprise to you, but a lay person can actually also baptize. And so when it comes to this excommunication, there are two types. And I kind of want to review this with you because it's very important with the kind of excommunication that Archbishop Viganò experienced. One is called latae sententiae, which places automatically an excommunication upon a particular crime, which means it's an ipso facto. If you do this, you are latae sententiae excommunicated. So it's kind of like willingly and knowingly doing something that can break communion between you and the church. It's like an ipso facto. You do this, this is going to happen. As opposed to ferende sententiae excommunication, which is imposed after the bishop has warned a person, in this case the Pope, has warned a person, but this person keeps offending anyway. So a bishop says, you got to stop doing this, because if you keep doing this, you're going to have to be excommunicated. The person does it anyway, and now the bishop issues a ferende excommunication, ferende sententiae excommunication. In the case of Archbishop Viganò, it is a latae sententiae excommunication. It means because he failed to show up and was absolutely defiant in showing up at this particular trial or investigation, He chose to excommunicate himself. That's kind of the differences there. So it's important for us to know that in all cases, an excommunication, while it is in a sense a breaking, it can be healed. That there's a rupture in the communion between this person and the body of Christ, the church. But the excommunication can come because this person chose to be excommunicated, or because the church had to decide this person cannot consider themselves a good practicing Catholic. Now, let's jump into it with our commentary and how culture is going to have to interpret this, because people are going to think that this is part of the cancel culture. Is it? Well, let's discuss. We have to ask ourselves, is this excommunication of Archbishop Viganò, is it a result of a difference in liberals versus conservatives? Well, it might be to a degree, but not necessarily in its full understanding. This is not the cancel culture. You know, in the same way, particularly liberals, let's just admit it, liberals in politics, when they hear something that might offend them, they will do everything they can to cancel that person. Now, conservatives do the exact same thing, but in a more capitalistic way. So, for example, if somebody wants to go to a store, a perfect example would be Planet Fitness. Do you remember that kind of debacle with Planet Fitness, and how Planet Fitness took the side of a trans man changing with his genitals unfortunately exposed in a woman's locker room when there were children, when there was a child present there, and some woman complained about it, put it online, and then guess what? Planet Fitness canceled this woman's subscription or membership to Planet Fitness. So that's a form of cancel culture. You break that relationship with that person. Planet Fitness, in a sense, did a ferende sententiae excommunication of this woman. But then when traditionally minded people, conservatives, heard about this, what did they do? They, in a sense, no longer wanted to be a member. They literally became latae sententiae members and says, I don't want to be a part of who you are, Planet Fitness. So they just cut their membership off completely. That's what they did. Is that a form of cancel culture? No. It's called free choice. In the case of Planet Fitness, they did the canceling. So there's two different ways to approach this. The Catholic Church never wants to cancel Viganò. That's not it at all. And so I want to encourage you, and we're going to hear more about this in my commentary. I don't want the Catholic Church, I don't want Catholics who might be supporters of Viganò to cancel the Catholic Church, because that would be just kind of ridiculous. And so if we are to take a look at this, why was this such a big deal? Well, it's a big deal because the accusation is that Archbishop Viganò was becoming a heretic, that he was creating schism in the Catholic Church, and basically accusing the Holy Father of either protecting Archbishop Cardinal McCarrick from the pedophile abuse claims that were proven true. Also, Archbishop Viganò was basically saying that the Holy Father wasn't really the Holy Father, questioning his legitimacy, as well as the legitimate office and authority of the CDF, which is the Congregation for the Doctrine of Faith. By not showing up, he basically excommunicated himself. It got very political and ugly. And it's quite unfortunate that all of this is happening, but it's going out over the entire world's news cycle and basically showing that the Catholic Church has some pretty messed up baggage. But you know what? We know this because the Catholic Church is made up of human beings. And so if we are to take a look at the Catholic Church in this particular situation, we're going to have to admit we do have some problems. We do have divisions, but we are not going to entertain the idea that the Catholic Church is participating in the attitudes of the cancel culture of leftists, of liberals, of basically woke but very sleep to reality minded people. So no, this is not the cancel culture. This is a due process which was supposedly followed. Now, a lot of people are going to say, now, aren't you supporting of Archbishop Viganò, Father Leo? I mean, do you want to support the Holy Father because of all of the crazy liberal things? I mean, people have to know that my generation of priests, I've been ordained now 25 years. When I first entered seminary, it was a little crazy. There were some really weird things that happened in seminary. And in a sense, there were some people who wanted to cancel the young generation of priests. They basically didn't want us to even get ordained because we were too conservative. Now, 25 years later, I have young priests, I know of young priests who think that my generation of priests are too liberal. And this is why the commentary is going to be helpful. It's going to help us to discern what this means and how do we approach this, because this excommunication is not about the cancel culture. It's about trying to bring our church together as the one Holy Roman Catholic Church. And so, if you're not a member of our Patreon community, please consider subscribing. We have many different levels for that because I'm going to now offer my commentary on that. But if you're only joining us for this time, we certainly hope that this was helpful to a degree to give you a better understanding of what all of this excommunication mumbo jumbo, quote unquote, mumbo jumbo seemingly means. But now we've got to get into it with how it helps us. But if you're not a member of our Patreon community, again, I certainly appreciate you watching this, and make sure that you always stay hungry for God.